Welcome to the next video tutorial Core Java Advanced Object Class Part 6. So in the last video tutorials we have learned that how we can make use of toString method in our class to return the content rather than the object reference, sorry, to return the object memory address. So moving on to the next program, so we will analysis another program. So let me develop that program. Here I have a class C. Here I do have two members in the class C, that is int I, and one method, that is public string to string. Public string to string. We are just having a return statement inside the body of this toString method. We are returning string I is equal to plus I. Finally, it will be returned as string and number. Finally, it is returning as string. Next, I do have another class called class D. Here I have three members, int j, then C type C1 variable. Observe carefully. C type C1 variable. Now I have the method public string to string. Public string to string. So here we are returning j is equal to plus j plus within double quotes comma plus C1 was the body of the toString method. So next we do have public class M5. Public class M5. So here we have one member called a main method. In the M5 we have the main method. Here inside the main method I'm creating an object for C. C C1 is equal to new C. So we are calling the default constructor in this case, and by using the reference variable I'm accessing the I and I'm assigning the value 10 to the I. Now I'm creating an object for D class with the reference variable name D1. I'm calling the default constructor. So now by using the reference variable I'm accessing the j and I'm assigning the value 20 to 8. Now what I'm doing, by using d1 I'm referring c1 and assigning c1 to By referring d1, I'm calling c1. Okay, by using d1, by using d1 reference variable, I'm accessing the c1. Okay, by referring the d1, I'm accessing the c1 reference variable, and I'm supplying this c1 to this. Now what is c1 and d1? What is c1 and d1? So first let me save it. In my case, I'll be saving it inside Visual Programming Core Java Objective Class, inside src folder. Public class name, here it is m5. Save it. Now we are what we are seeing, it is has a relationship. Has a relationship. D has C type. Class D has C type. We have declared one C type reference variable inside the class D. Now C class contains one attribute and the D class contains two attributes. So what is the output we're gonna get in this case? So we know that whenever we are creating an object, all the non-static members of that class will be loaded to the memory with their default values. Now I'm creating an object for C. Here initially I will be loaded with the 0 itself. Then by using the C1 reference, I'm accessing I and I'm reinitializing it with the value 10. Now the new value of I, it is 10. After that, what we are doing, we are creating an object for class D, and here all the non-static members of class D will be loaded to the memory, and it is initializing with the default values. What happened? Mm, okay. SRC M5. Okay. Now, what is this C1 will be loaded? Like, what is the current value of C1? How I can know that the value? Now, let me just put it in the IIB block. So, system.out.println. So here, I'll just keep C1. Let's see what happens. Save this and go to the src, copy this path and go to the command prompt and go to that directory, cd, paste the path enter the drive name, give the cls command. Now trigger the java c command, java c hyphen d double dot slash classes, and the name of the file, it is m5.java. So if it is successful, it will be generating the dot class file inside the classes folder. Now we are triggering the java command. So now java hyphen cp double dot classes m5, the name of the class that is having the main method, that is m5. Enter. What is the output we are getting? So observe, whenever d class members are loading to the memory, c1 it is loaded with the default value, that is null. Okay, c1 it is loaded with the default value null. Now what I'm doing here, by using d1 reference, I'm accessing j and I'm assigning 20 to 8. Okay, so I'm assigning 20 to 8. Now the j value will be 20. By using d1 reference, I'm accessing c1 now. By using d1 reference, I'm accessing c1 now. Why? Because d has c. Why? Because we have has a relationship of d consisting of c. Now by using d1, I can refer the c1. Why? Because d has c. Now what is c1? c1 is pointing to one attribute, that is I. That attribute contains a value that is 10. All right. So now I'm supplying 10. All right. 10 to this. Now what is happening here? What is C1 and what is D1? So while calling C1, so what we are getting, it is I is equal to 10. Okay. That is fine. Why? Because C1 it is pointing to an attribute of class C, and that attribute I contains the value 10. So how we are getting the content, it is we have overridden toString method in the class C to return the content rather than the object address. That is how we are getting the content rather than the object memory address. Now what we are doing, I'm calling d1. All right, I'm calling d1 now. I'm supplying d1 inside the SOP statement. So while we are calling the d1, what happens? Now c1 has got a value that is pointing to an attribute I, and that contains the value 10. Now d has c1. By using d1, we are accessing this c1. For c1, we are supplying this value. All right. For c1, we are supplying this value. So for whatever the object c1 it is pointing, for the same object, this c1 also will be pointing. Now this c1 will be pointing to an attribute that is I of class C, and that attribute has is having the value that is 10. All right, so now we got the values for d1 and c1, right? So while we are calling d1, what we are getting here, so it is invoking the toString method. While we are calling this d1, it is invoking the toString method. So what we have written, what we have developed to return the content rather than the object memory address. Return j is equal to j value, that is 20, plus c1. Now c1 is has got some value. It is pointing to an attribute. It is pointing to an object of class C, and that attribute is internally having the value 10, right? So that is why we are getting j is equal to 20 and I is equal to 10, right? So here has a relationship. Class D has C1 of type C. So it is clear that how we are getting the null. Okay, so then how it is initialized with the value 10. We can check it out like here. I'll just keep the value j. All right, j. So here I'll just put the value inside the IIB system dot out dot println. So here I'm just keeping I. So now we can know what it is going on while we are creating an object. At that time, IIB will be executed. While we are creating an object, at that time, IIB will be executed from top to bottom. What we are calling this block as the IIB, and it has no name, no return value, and no access specifier. And we already know that which one will execute, constructor or IIB. All right. So let me clarify that also. I'll just keep one constructor, that is no argument constructor, right? So here system dot out dot println. Here I'll just keep the message from no org constructor of C. Like this, I'm keeping the statement. So save this, try to compile and run. Come back to the command prompt and try to compile and run. So you can just use the up arrow to get the previously entered command in the command prompt. So look for java c command. We have the perfect command over here. Just trigger that command by pressing enter. So it is successfully compiled and the newly generated class is replacing the old generated class, that is M5. Now trigger the Java command. So what is the output we are getting? So initially what we are getting 0, while we have created the object for class C. So here we are getting the value of I, that is the default value, that is 0, right, while it is loading to the memory. Then constructor is executing, right? So then constructor it is executing. First IIB is executing, right? While we are creating an object, at that time IB will be executed from top to bottom, and then it is executing the constructor here. After that it is executing the constructor. Then we are getting null, where we are getting null. So after that, while we are creating an object for class D, right? So while we are creating an object for class D, it is invoking the IIB of class D. In this case, this is the IIB block for class D. And what is the current value of this reference, that is null. All right, this reference is not pointing anywhere, right? It is its reference, this reference, it is not pointing anywhere. So the default value of this reference, while it is initialized, it is initializing with the null value. After that, what is the j value? That is 0, right? So that is the default value when it is loaded to the memory. After that, we know that I is equal to 10. Why we are getting I is equal to 10? That is for C1, and then we are getting j is equal to 20 and I is equal to 10 in this case. So after creating an object for class D, by using a reference variable of D1, I'm supplying the value for this attribute j. So 20 it is. Now the j value is 20, I value is 10. Now by using D1 reference variable, I'm accessing the C1. Why? Because D has C. We have the has a relationship in D. So whatever the C1 it is pointing to an object, for the same object C1 also will be pointing now, right? We are initializing the C1 of class D to point to whatever the C1 of class C it is pointing. So C1 of class C, it is pointing to an object, that the object internally C1 is having pointing to an attribute, right? Is internally having an attribute. So that attribute contains the value 10. So now C1 of D will be also getting the value 10. So then D1, right? D1 it is 20. So while we are calling C1 internally, it is calling toString method of class C, and we are getting I is equal to 10 as the output. When we are calling the D1 of the D, it is internally calling the toString method of D class, and here j is equal to what is the value, that is 20 comma what is the current value of C1, that is pointing to an object, and that object internally is having one attribute, right? That attribute is having internally the value 10, right? Now the value of c1 of class D, it is same of whatever the class C1 it is pointing to the same object. Both C1 will be pointing to the same object, right? So both will be pointing to the same object. That is why we are getting C1 as um, I is equal to 10, right? I is equal to 10. All right. So this is it for this video tutorial. We have seen that has a relationship, right? In this case, we have seen that has a relationship. D has C type, right? C class contains one attribute, and D class contains two attributes. So this is it for this video tutorial. We will analyze another program in the next video tutorial. Thank you.